The grizzly bear, also known as the brown bear, gets its name by the grizzled effect given off by the lighter tips of its fur. They have massive heads and small ears, but their nose is the most powerful, giving them an excellent sense of smell. It is common to see a grizzly standing on its hind legs, and this is often misconstrued as an act of aggression, when in reality, the highly curious animal is just trying to get a better smell or view. Brown bears use their phenomenal sense of smell to detect prey and dead flesh, find suitable foods, locate mates, find cubs, and avoid people from miles away. Their coloring can range anywhere from white to cinnamon to black, but it's usually a shade of brown. Their most distinguishing characteristic is their large muscle mass between their shoulders. This hump is not in the similar-looking black bears. Grizzlies use their tremendous power and strength given by this muscle to move several tons of dirt for a winter den site. Brown bears have been described as omnivores or large carnivores, depending on where they inhabit, which include a greater diversity of habitats than any other bear species. They are found in dense forests, subalpine meadows, open plains, and Arctic tundra. Those living on foothills consume a more carnivorous diet, where there are high concentrations of spawning salmon, or in Arctic areas, high concentrations of ungulates. These are the areas with high grizzly densities, or more than 10 bears per 100 kilometers squared, as well as the deciduous and mixed forests of eastern European mountain ranges. Moderate grizzly densities can be found in interior mountain ranges, where bears forage on a variety of grasses, herbs, roots, berries, nuts, and animal matter. Low densities are in the dry, desert-like areas, and where bear numbers have decreased because of high human and domestic livestock densities. Bears digest plants inefficiently because they have the morphology and digestive physiology of carnivores, so those in interior regions have smaller body sizes. The majority of grizzlies live in temperate ecosystems and undergo a 2 to 4 month period of hyperphagia in the late summer and early fall, where they intensify their calorie intake by gorging carb-rich berries to rapidly deposit fat for their hibernation from November to March. They can gain more than 3 pounds a day during this period. To prepare for hibernation, brown bears find a sheltered slope under a large rock or within the roots of a tree. Excluding hibernation, grizzlies' lowest energy levels are in the early spring and late fall. During their post-hibernation period from late April to early May, grizzlies feed on alpine sweet veg fruits, some small mammals, and, as always, ungulates. Green vegetation takes the primary focus in their diets from June to July, then fruit in the late fall. The brown bear species is secure as a whole because of the relatively large numbers and expansive range. However, small, isolated populations are threatened because of frequent contact with humans. Because grizzlies are large and somewhat aggressive, and they are attracted to human food areas, they may be killed as a consequence. Those living near humans are also killed because of vehicle and train collisions, and some are poached for parts or products, like their gallbladders and paws for commercial trade. Grizzlies are also hunted for sport. In addition, many countries do not have the resources for monitoring grizzly bears, and even with plans, the legal take for grizzlies may equal or exceed the legal take. And in cases where there are large populations of grizzly bears, they are illegally hunted. Even small numbers of bears removed from small populations can have adverse effects on population growth. In the same effect, preventing just a few deaths may avert a population decline for the grizzly bear. Larger female bears usually have larger litters, and cubs from the same litter can have different fathers. Breeding season takes place between May to July, but the implantation of the blastocyst is delayed until late autumn, and this may not even occur if the mom doesn't have enough stored up fat for herself and the embryo. Cubs are mostly born in litters of 1 to 3, and they're born in January or early February when the mom is hibernating. With the exception of a female with her cubs, the grizzly bear is normally solitary, shy, and retiring. They avoid human settlements but will defend themselves when threatened. However, they are in fact capable of habituating to people. This proved to be true at the zoo, as the number of people watching them, even some loud, boisterous children, did not seem to affect the grizzly's behavior. Normally active from dawn to dusk, some bears become nocturnal in places with more humans to avoid contact with them. If not nocturnal, brown bears rest in the heat of the day, preferably in water, if available. We saw this at the zoo. They use what are called rub trees to scratch their backs. Surprisingly, grizzly bears are not very territorial and often share home ranges. They are somewhat social with one another and follow a dominance hierarchy based on age, size, and temperament base. The large, mature males are at the top of the hierarchy and gain their social position by acting aggressively. Females with young come next because of their aggression from maternal protectiveness, then single adult females, then adolescents, and finally the subadults are at the bottom. A brown bear expresses facials that indicate its mood. The relaxed face is seen when the ears point laterally or twitch to the rear and the mouth is closed or naturally open a bit. The bear is unfocused in these instances, like while fishing, grazing, walking, or resting. During social play, a grizzly will have this relaxed face, except with the mouth open and upper lip curled up to expose its teeth. However, the grizzly does not growl during amicable interactions.
I think that's so close. I think that's his mom and dad. That's the kid. Oh, he's going up the stairs. Oh my gosh. Yo, guy. Oh.
What if it jumped out from the rock into the water?
I think he's trying to go in the door. Look at that one, the adult one is chilling out.
What if the bear went up in?
So if somebody went and then he broke. Oh, they're fighting. Fight. Look at that bear. Oh, look at that bear. Okay, shut up. Tackle each other. Come on, you're in the bathtub. Oh, look at that one.
My bear has like lighter head fur, right?
Oh!
When alert, a brown bear has cocked, alert ears, wide eyes, an erect head, and a closed or slightly open mouth. It usually exhibits this face while looking intently at a distant animal, either at prey like salmon or out of mere curiosity. When tense, the grizzly's mouth is closed and its ears are not completely flattened but laid back. The bear frequently ducks its head and tries to avoid eye contact with its opponent. The tense, closed mouth face can be seen when a grizzly feels threatened but does respond, or when it just walks past another bear. In fact, while grazing, grizzly bears periodically look around and seem to check the locations of other bears nearby. If another bear comes close, the original usually leaves to maintain dispersion. When a grizzly is faced with another and decides to retreat, it puckers its lip. It exhibits an expression in which its unflattened ears are rotated towards the rear, its eyes are fairly wide, its canines are visible, its lips are hanging loosely, and its head is low while defending a fishing spot or while trying to displace another bear. Lastly, and most aggressive of all, the biting face is used when in close-range conflicts that can include actual biting and lead to more aggressive acts. This expression looks identical to the relaxed, open mouth face, with the exception of the ears being flattened and against the head and the whites of the eyes showing. The grizzly's nose is curled upward and revealed to the upper canines. Loud roars join the biting face. Separating sounds is very difficult for most mammals, and the brown bear is no exception. But, if distinguished, a grizzly's sounds can be categorized into huffing, woofing, growling, roaring, and bawling. Huffing is common in tense situations. It includes an open mouth of about 20 degrees and repetitive, harsh, and raspy breaths between fluttered lips. Woofing is less harsh but more explosive and sounds like one gasp of pressurized air suddenly being released and occurs when a bear is startled. A grizzly also growls when startled, but these are more aggressive than woofs. It can be a harsh low grr anywhere from a brief period of time to a continuing rumble. This is especially used when one bear approaches another. A grizzly tends to not tolerate another being in close proximity of it. Roars, however, are the most thunderous and intimidating and can be heard from at least 2 kilometers away. The roars can extend for long periods of time between fighting bears. Lastly, the repetitive bawling sound is a sign for contact. Cubs will bawl for their mothers, or a female will bawl if separated from a mate. The exhibit, as you see here, was wide and had a variety of sections. On the ground there were 3 ponds, a horizontal tree along one of the ponds, a den area, different areas for grazing with food scattered about, and an area with 2 large rocks and a fake tree. On the extreme left of the enclosure closest to us was a door. Next to that, again close to the viewers, was an area with the 2 large rocks and fake tree. Behind the first door were stairs made out of rocks that led to another door on the left. Another flight of stairs would lead to the mountain spanning the width of the entire exhibit, and what appeared to be pretty deep as well. On the extreme right there was another pile of rocks that the bears could use to get down from. There was a cave under these rocks and a pond next to the cave. Moving left but sticking close to the area on the ground in front of the mountain, there was another pond with a tree against it. A stream emerged from the pond and moved left, connecting it to the third pond. As far as I could see, this was the only pond with a ball in it. To the left of the pond were the original stairs leading up to the mountain. In front of all three ponds and behind the rocks and tree was a large empty space with patches of grass, with food scattered about it. I carefully observed 2 out of the 4 bears. One was larger than the other, and both were a dark brown color, unlike the other 2 bears in the enclosure who had light brown spots on their fur. The 2 I focused on were adult males, and the other 2 appeared to be young grizzlies. In general, there was a constant flow of around 20 people watching the grizzlies from the 3 areas they could be observed by, gated by a rope fence. The ground level for the grizzlies was below the observation areas, so we were looking slightly down on them. Nevertheless, the amount of people and even the amount of noise did not seem to have any effect on the bears. My research indicates that wild brown bears would react by avoiding humans or taking precautions to defend themselves. However, these bears have probably been habituated to human contact. After some further research, I found that the bears were actually brought to the zoo because they had become too habituated to people and could no longer survive in the wild. Nevertheless, I did identify actions that correlated with my research. Having visited in late May, the main focus for a typical adult male grizzly would be to find a mate. Of course, there were no females in the enclosure, and although hyperphagia usually starts in the late summer, I predict that since the climate in New York City is milder than the bear's natural habitat, the period of hyperphagia would be less intense. Instead, the bears will probably consume a more constant, steady amount of food throughout the spring, summer, and fall, because their food does not change with the season. This would explain the constant eating and chewing the bears spent their time doing. Within the 90-minute period of observation, there was minimal contact between the bears, with only a few instances of aggression and playing. On the ground, the bears seemed to do a pretty good job in avoiding each other and staying dispersed, just as they typically would in the wild. The first encounter between 2 bears was aggressive and actually occurred between the 2 bears I had been closely observing. The 2 adult males had been far apart before the incident. Both bears stood on their hind legs, and there were a few growls with jawing. I was not close enough to see their expressions, but if I predict that both had a biting face because of the intense aggression between the 2. Being the adult males, perhaps the encounter was overpower, but nothing in particular seemed to bring the aggression on. However, both did share similar social statuses of being the larger adult males of the 4, which I found could provoke the sudden charge and jawing. Although they were on their hind legs, I do not think that the encounter would be categorized as overt fighting, because it did not seem extremely intense. It did, however, appear to end in a standoff, and both bears separated and kept their distance afterwards. I observed their interactions more carefully from then on. After the first interaction with Bear 1, Bear 2 spent a lot of his time grazing. I noticed that when the other younger bears came near Bear 2, he would simply turn his body so he was facing away. He did not change locations. The younger bear never stayed for longer than a couple seconds, and he seemed to always be the one who left for a different area. I could see that Bear 2, being the largest male, definitely was of the highest dominance of the 4 bears. Both bears had relaxed faces for the majority of the observation time. They spent the majority of their time grazing before the heat of the day and, as expected, spent the hottest hours in the water. At these times, the bears seemed to accept the close proximities to one another. At 11:21 a.m., Bear 1 had an interaction with a younger bear. There appeared to be jawing between them, but this was not aggressive. There were no audible sounds, therefore it was a playful encounter. From 12:21 p.m. to 12:25 p.m., Bears 1 and 2 again started jawing. However, this time it appeared to be playful. They pushed each other on the chest in the pool and continued for this for a couple minutes before Bear 1 left with a distinct, relaxed face, mouth slightly open and ears lateral. This observation confirms that the encounter between the 2 bears was indeed playful. Although the grizzly bear exhibit was fairly large in comparison to other exhibits, I think that the Bronx Zoo could have improved their exhibit by making it even bigger. In the wild, a high density area for grizzly bears is considered 10 bears per 100 kilometers squared. However, in such a tiny space for the zoo, there were 4 bears. Obviously, there are space limitations for the zoo, so this might not be able to be achieved. However, I do think that it's important that the bears have enough room to spread out and stay dispersed as to not get into as many conflicts. I also noticed that there was only one ball in one of the pools for the grizzlies to play with. Considering that there were 2 young grizzlies, I think that there should be more toys in the water as well as on the ground. In addition, the only tree that was in the exhibit was fake. I think that there should be some more real trees to provide shelter for the grizzlies because there's not enough space for each of them to be sheltered while still staying separate.